Thank you for joining us today as we celebrate the life of Gordon Moore. Please welcome to the podium Moore family friend, Pastor Scott Grant.
Please join me in prayer if that is your custom. God, we thank you for the life of Gordon Moore, for the gift that he was and will continue to be to the multitudes here and around the world. Thank you that he was not only a great man, known for his world-changing vision and achievements as a technologist, entrepreneur, philanthropist, and conservationist, but also that he was a good man who loved his family and so many others. May his tribe increase. God, we entrust him to you, knowing that you can do far more abundantly than all that we ask or think. And now we ask that we may remember Gordon well, and that we may be inspired by his memory to carry on as good men and women who care for others and all that you have created. Amen.
Let's take a moment to recognize Gordon Moore and a life well lived.
I think we really know where we want to go, and we know what's necessary to get there.
Gordon was never the loudest person in the room, yet when he spoke, everybody listened.
When he did speak, it was always very important.
Gordon taught me just a lot about what it means to be a visionary, what it means to be a leader.
Gordon Moore taught me that nice guys can finish first.
Gordon was the nicest of the nice guys, very understated and humble.
And at the same time, a fierce competitor in the world of business.
Gordon helped define the most significant innovation engine the world has ever known with the company called Intel.
He was the technical genius behind Silicon Valley.
He really taught all of us what the semiconductor business was then and what it could be in the future.
Where it's going to lead is kind of hard to predict now, but I'm sure it's going to be exciting. Well, it certainly has been exciting to be part of this industry.
So many of the things we interact with in the course of the day are made possible because of Gordon's work.
Gordon always stood in the intersection of technology and business.
We knew it was a new idea, we thought it was significant, but the magnitude was far beyond anything we could have imagined.
Of course, Gordon will be known for Moore's Law.
In 1965, he postulated Moore's Law.
I took a wild extrapolation and said, we're going to continue doubling every year.
It was a far-reaching extrapolation.
Now, what I was trying to do was get across the idea this is the way electronics are going to become cheap.
But it's almost a directive to the industry that, hey, if you want to be competitive, this is where you have to be.
It really set the roadmap for other people to follow.
From being just a measure of what has happened, it's become a driver of what is going to happen.
At Google, we always think about OKRs, and I always thought, Gordon's vision and what became Moore's Law was one of the most ambitious OKRs ever.
Here we are, 58 years later. Moore's Law is still going.
We see ourselves as the stewards of Moore's Law. And I truly believe that as long as innovation continues, Gordon Moore's legacy will continue.
So in my 4 decades in journalism, I've had a chance to interview presidents and kings and generals and the terrorist leaders even. But when people ask me what was my favorite interview, I tell them it was the opportunity to interview an 86-year-old Gordon Moore on the 50th anniversary of Moore's Law in 2015 at the Exploratorium in San Francisco. In that interview, I asked him, when was the moment that you came home and turned to your wife Betty and said, honey, they named a law after me? He answered, well, for the first 20 years, I couldn't utter the term Moore's Law. It was embarrassing, he said. But finally, I got accustomed to it, where now I could say it with a straight face. That's a humble guy.
I consider myself very lucky that our path has crossed.
He was a technical godfather of Silicon Valley. Everyone respected him.
He hired good people. They all loved him. Everybody loved him.
I'll remember also his kind heart and his incredible generosity.
He was a scientist, a statesman, an inventor, a founder, a philanthropist, and he wore all those hats so gracefully and in such an inspirational way.
He was a man who looked into the future and saw so many ways that technology could improve people's lives. Gordon Moore was a giant, a visionary, and someone who showed us that a good idea can change the world.
Please welcome to the stage, Intel CEO, Pat Gelsinger.
Welcome everyone to Intel headquarters here in Santa Clara, California, and it's my honor to serve as Intel CEO. We have jets planned to fly over here. Remember, this is the flight path here, so when they do, just ignore them for a moment. Since its birth more than 50 years ago, Intel has been an engine for innovation. It has also in many ways been part of my family. I often say I grew up in these hallways, fueled by ambition and belief in the power of technology to improve the life of every person on the planet, and inspired by the leadership of the trio that put the silicon into Silicon Valley: Bob Noyce, Andy Grove, and Gordon Moore. Throughout my career, I have worked to live up to the lessons I learned from Gordon. I'm humbled and honored to have this opportunity to follow in his footsteps, taking the baton of leadership and continuing his iconic legacy through this company. My career and much of my life took shape within the possibilities fueled by Gordon's leadership at the helm of Intel. I was a teenager in 1979 when I first stepped onto this campus. Gordon was CEO and just assumed the duties of chairman of the board of directors. My first interaction with him was 2 weeks after I started as an 18-year-old kid when he was speaking at the new employee orientation. A few years later, I found myself in a meeting with Gordon, Robert, and Andy because the computers weren't stable as I was trying to finish the 8386 chip. Our Amdahl machine turned into an IBM mainframe and it wasn't stable. And I was this young, precocious engineer trying to get the chip out the door. And to Gordon's credit, he listened to me. And just growing up in that kind of culture, which fueled by ambition, the faith, the confidence of innovation, and that my ideas were important to be considered on the spot. To me, Gordon's remarkable legacy is his matter-of-fact, roll-up-your-sleeves conviction that you could create the world you want to live in and do it with integrity. He famously said, "What can be done can be outdone." He believed you could invent technologies that could change lives. Our first flyover. You could create the kind of company you and others wanted to work for. You could innovate and make investments to protect the environment, to improve healthcare, and to spark scientific discoveries. He believed it because he did it. Gordon co-founded one of the world's greatest technology companies that is still vibrant 50 years later. He helped create the fearless business and engineering culture that was born in Silicon Valley and resonates in every corner of the world today. He defined the technology industry through his insight and vision. He was instrumental in revealing the power of transistors and continues to inspire technologists and entrepreneurs across the generations to this day. Our expanding and renaming of our Rondler Acres site to the Gordon Moore Center last year was profound, worthy, and prescient. My final visit to Gordon late last year is a moment I will cherish forever. When I told him of the campus naming, he replied, "I'd be honored. Remember to spell my name right, 2 O's. Classic Gordon. Ever an understated man, Gordon once said in an interview, "It's kind of funny that Moore's Law is what I'm best known for." It was a relatively simple observation. At Intel, we remain inspired by Moore's Law, and we will pursue it until the periodic table is exhausted. Gordon's vision lives on as our true north as we continue to live into our purpose of creating technology that improves the life of every single person on the planet. Additionally, the impact of his and Betty's tremendous philanthropy will be felt for decades to come. I think I speak for entire community when I say he leaves behind a legacy that changed the lives of every person. His memory will live on. As a father of 4 and now a grandfather of 8, there's power of the word Dad, Papa. And our next speaker is Ken Moore, the eldest son of Gordon and Betty Moore, who gets to use that word, Dad, when he speaks of Gordon. Prior to his 20-year career with the foundation, Ken spent a quarter century in management positions in the semiconductor industry at Signetics Corporation and at Philips Semiconductors. Please join me in welcoming Dad, Ken Moore, to the stage.
Well, thank you, Pat, and thank you to Intel and the Foundation for hosting this event. I also want to thank everybody who's here and online who sent emails, gave phone calls, sent cards, etc. I apologize for not getting back to everyone yet. Let's just say there's been a lot of condolences. I will say a few words on behalf of the Moore family, many that are here, and my mother who is watching online. She's unable to be here with us. My dad was a wonderful father and an amazing role model. There are no words to express his profound influence in my life, in the lives of our family, the lives of everyone gathered here and online, and even the lives of billions around the world. I'm going to speak to his life in 3 areas: family, work, and fishing. I'll wait for that a second. Okay, in the area of family, Dad imparted strong family values. First, the importance of getting things done. You should not waste the day or time. A few weeks before his passing, he was unable to ambulate and had a day in his chair watching televised sports, and proclaimed that evening that it was less than a good day because he didn't get anything useful done. For Dad, one must be produce and be useful every day. Number 2, and sign a link to number 1, there's no sleeping in on weekends. When I lived at home, he'd come down to my room about 7:30 a.m. and blow reveille, just like that, with his mouth, not a bugle, thank goodness, but at one time, he even just handed me a hoe and a file and said, "There's a half an acre of weeds out in the back, go hoe them down." And that took me quite a while. Number 3 was the value and expectation of being on time. And being on time, he means be early. If we were planning to go fishing at 4 a.m., I better be there no later than 3:50 a.m. or I'll be considered late. When Intel had the "you must be at work by 8 a.m. rule, or you had to sign in so your manager knew you were late, he dutifully signed in a couple of times, even though he was attending a meeting at a different building earlier. He said he didn't think his boss would get mad at him. The value of risk-taking is number 4. His quote, whoops, no, wait a second here. So his quote, so the value of risk-taking, and his quote, which is found on the side of the Tech Interactive Museum in San Jose, reads, "If everything you try works, you aren't trying hard enough." He has reiterated that sentiment many times over the years in many ways, in many contexts. Smart risks are good. Failure is an option. In conjunction, he said, One thing a leader does is to remove the stigma of mistakes. With engineering, I view this year's failure as next year's opportunity to try it again. Failures are not something to be avoided. You want to have them happen as quickly as you can so you can make progress rapidly. Number 5, he also thought one should remain intellectually inquisitive in their entire life. Dad was always intellectually curious, constantly keeping abreast of all types of science, world events, and fishing matters. His office overflowed with books and magazines. He was a voracious reader. He was still reading Science magazine a short while before his passing. I'd just say he would probably say, stay curious. Lastly, and most very significant, they're really letting him out quick today. Okay, lastly and very significantly, the importance of time with family. My mother made sure he was at home for daily family dinners by 7 p.m. where we all talked about our days. He worked on projects or played with the family on most weekends, and we always had Friday night dinners out and regularly brought friends along. This provided a very warm family life that I greatly treasure, as well as I try to emulate to this day. So that was the family side and kind of background. Area number 2 is work. I feel I'd be remiss if I didn't mention his life's work, even though all you here probably know about it. For me, Dad was at the forefront of the most important technology of the second half of the 20th century, co-founding 2 seminal companies that put the silicon in Silicon Valley, with Fairchild Semiconductor inventing the integrated circuit and Intel the microprocessor. The world has never been the same. The adoption of computer chips in nearly everything due to reduced cost and increased functionality has brought amazing improvements in medicine, things like MRI, CT scans, drug development, automobile efficiencies, GPS, phones, computers, aircraft, appliances. There's just millions of uses. These world-changing effects keep accelerating. He termed himself an accidental entrepreneur, but there was no accident in the results that these companies created. Then there's work number 2. At age 71, after having achieved financial success in the work bucket, he established the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation. And Harvey will talk about this. It will be their legacy after we're all gone. It's set up to operate in perpetuity, and the foundation is rather unique in that it encompasses Dad's values of setting measurable goals in philanthropy and measuring their realization or not, rather than just dispensing funds to worthy causes. Work number 3 is, personally, my parents have also helped create or enhance innumerable organizations, from helping found a local charter school, they helped propel a fledgling conservation organization to become one of the world's largest. He chaired the board and catalyzed scientific research at the California Institute of Technology while supporting a myriad of technologies and research labs. He helped fund the laboratory that created the CRISPR biological editing technology at Berkeley. He helped fund the creation of new instrumentation for the twin 10-meter Keck telescopes in Hawaii. He has sponsored instruments for planetary defense of Earth to alert about potential asteroids, and the list goes on. Literally many hundreds of fascinating projects and funding brilliant people. Big area number 3 is fishing. Mom and Dad are avid fishermen, or fisherwomen, and have traveled the world fishing. Family vacations included fishing. Fishing was at the core of my father's being. He said, if it swims, I want to catch it. He would go after anything from trout in the Sierras or in Montana to 1,000-pound black marlin and ribbon reef in Australia. As a fishing enthusiast, and I could probably say fanatic, Dad has a trophy wall of mounted fish at home, including marlin, sailfish, roosterfish, amberjack, mahi-mahi, wahoo, yellowfin, bluefin, you name it. It's up there. There are way too many fishing stories to tell, so I'm just going to recount one. Groups of friends, family and friends, would go fishing on his 27-foot boat inside the San Francisco Bay for striped bass, or out in the ocean outside the Golden Gate for salmon or albacore tuna. One time we were outside the Golden Gate with his brothers salmon fishing. I was driving the boat, and I happened to see water in the cabin. Turns out there's about a 2-inch diameter hole in the boat's hull. The floorboards are already floating. Water is gushing in like a geyser, and we are going to sink. Dad tells me to aim the boat toward shore. However, that's about 5 or 6 miles away. And then he jumps down in the cabin in the water, finds a towel, and stuffs it in the hole. So now I have a slower leak, one that the boat's bilge pumps could keep up with. So what do? We keep fishing another 6 hours. And then we had the boat repair facility pull it out when we returned that evening. And yes, we caught a good number of salmon that day. Nothing gets in the way of fishing. So anyway, in conclusion, of course, Dad was a great man in the way people use that phrase to talk about somebody's impact on the wider world and their role in history. But he's also a good man, kind and unassuming. He set a great example. He was a devoted husband of 72 years, a loving father and grandfather, a thoughtful friend. He lived life with humor and grace, pursued hobbies and interests with passion, was a hard worker with a strong work ethic, but maintained a healthy work-life balance. And he left the community and the world better than he found it. He was a humble, compassionate man with an exceptional life story, unparalleled integrity, countless friends, and a family that loved him.
He was a good man. And I think that summarizes so many aspects. Thank you, Ken, for those thoughts. Gordon and Betty were philanthropists of the highest order, and they shaped my own thoughts on philanthropy, as well as that of numerous others. Our next speaker, Harvey Feinberg, is the president of the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, which Gordon and his wife established to create positive outcomes for future generations. Harvey previously served as the president of the U.S. National Academy of Medicine, as provost of Harvard University, and as the dean of Harvard Chan School of Public Health. Harvey.
Pat, thank you and the entire team here at Intel for your gracious hospitality today. It's a wonderful venue to remember and to celebrate Gordon. Dearest Betty, Ken, Steve, Chris, Kathleen, Alex, David, Laura Ann, Sarah, colleagues, and dear friends. Gordon Moore had a penchant for measurement. On my way to heaven, he used to say, I'll want to stop off in hell to pick up a comparison group. Well, now Gordon likely has acquired his control group. But perhaps he was surprised by the large number of candidates he had to choose from. In Gordon Moore, we can take the measure of the man in 3 ratios. The first is the smallest imaginable ratio of ego to achievement. Unlike the rest of us, for example, Gordon never seemed to take Moore's law all that seriously. Like any exponential, he observed, it's destined to end eventually. Gordon once explained that he had looked it up on the internet and was gratified to find more references to Moore's law than to Murphy's law. Gordon had a droll, dry, understated, and underestimated sense of humor. With the possible exception of Betty, Gordon was the least impressed person on the planet with being Gordon Moore. One of our senior staff at the foundation started working 11 years ago. He was attending his first event, the annual picnic, held on the grounds of the Moore family home in Woodside. As he was sitting alone at a table, a man approached from behind and asked politely if it was okay if he sat there. The new employee turned around and was startled to see Gordon Moore. He thought, "You're Gordon Moore, you own the place, you can sit anywhere you want." Instead, he said, "Yes, please be my guest." And then a warm personal conversation ensued with his boss's boss. The second ratio to measure the man is the greatest value per word uttered by any human being. No one ever did more while saying less than Gordon. And when he did speak, typically after others had said their piece, Gordon had a knack for striking at the essence of the matter. His few words were well chosen, worth hearing, and heeding. And the third ratio is Gordon's seemingly infinite store of love for Betty and his family. This was expressed frequently in ways great and small. One of my colleagues recalls meeting with Gordon and Betty you'll never guess where. It was on a beach near their home in Hawaii. She couldn't help but notice on the way back to the house, Gordon and Betty walked holding hands. After so many years, she thought, they still like each other. As we've heard, Gordon and Betty shared a lifelong love of fishing. I once asked Gordon, what type of fishing do you most enjoy? Fly fishing, spin fishing, deep sea fishing? And he said, if it has a wet line, I like it. It was through their fishing ventures to beautiful remote locations that Gordon and Betty began to witness the loss of irreplaceable natural landscapes and seascapes under the guise of development. Their early philanthropy to preserve beautiful natural settings matured into the establishment more than 2 decades ago of the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation. Through this philanthropy, Gordon and Betty sought to preserve what is good in the world through environmental conservation and to pave the way for progress toward a better world through basic science. They also sought to preserve the special character of the Bay Area, the place they were both reared and long called home, and in response to Betty's experience as a patient, to improve nursing and patient care. Gordon understood better than most the hazards of prediction, especially about the future. When asked why he had not made any new predictions after Moore's Law, he said, having made one successful prediction, he thought it best to refrain from speculating on another. Why spoil a perfect average? Gordon's appreciation of the vagaries of the future framed Gordon and Betty's statement of founders' intent, their 2015 expression of aspirations and approach to their foundation's work. This statement reveals Gordon's values and ways of thinking. Gordon and Betty want us to make a significant and positive impact on the world. Gordon thought in terms of positive change 10,000 years into the future. They want us to apply the scientific method in our decision making. They want us willing to take risks and to pursue attainable and measurable goals at a scale and for the duration required to achieve them. They want us to find important, under-resourced areas and not just be one of the pack enthralled by the topic of the day. They want us to invite independent external evaluation and to face up to the unvarnished results. They want us to seek durable change and not just a delay in consequences. As Gordon remarked about our work in the environment, we want to win and not just to lose more slowly. Helpfully, the statement of founders' intent identifies some things not to do. For example, we should refrain in general from responding to emergencies or disasters and should not fund civil disobedience or religious purposes. Gordon and Betty want us to seek out the best experts to accomplish our goals and to respect grantees. My favorite admonition in the statement is not to jerk the grantees around. They anticipate in the statement that the future can change the landscape of problems and opportunities considerably. Gordon and Betty expect the board and the foundation to adapt its program over time to meet these changing conditions. And yet, they add, if they were to return to the foundation in a decade, or a century, or a millennium, they would hope to find a recognizable institution, one that is innovative, intellectually rigorous, willing to take risks, operating efficiently, acting with humility, and achieving measurable results. Today, we can honor Gordon by emulating Gordon's humility. We honor Gordon by accomplishing our work with frugality. We honor Gordon by choosing our words carefully. We honor Gordon by following science and evidence. We honor Gordon by going fishing. We honor Gordon by achieving better measurable outcomes. And we honor Gordon by pursuing lasting love. Gordon Moore made the world a better place. Insofar as we follow his example, he makes us better persons. His legacy lives on in a family, a company, an industry, a valley, a philanthropy, a world he helped create. His legacy lives on in the work you do, and all who knew and learned from his example do every day. We celebrate the man and honor his legacy by seeking in whatever ways we can to create enduring change for the good.
I think you know that Gordon was an avid fisherman.
And I have this image in my mind of him on the Bitterroot River near Darby, Montana, catching a big brown trout. The smile on his face, the relaxation in his body.
He loved the outdoors. Education and science were always important to him. He and his foundation reflected those values.
First, the creation of the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation and its support of scientific and conservation research.
Gordon and Betty made a very generous gift, but after that became very involved with funding some research on tunas in the wild. Today they're recovering, thanks in large part to research that Gordon funded.
His foundation has done much good within the world, and I'm sure is going to continue to do much good.
Across the years, his generosity was extraordinary. He never stopped giving, and never stopped finding new ways to help others.
You know, there are a lot of reasons why people should get involved in charitable opportunities. First of all, there's great need, and it's also satisfying, because you can actually see where you have an impact in other people's lives to make them better.
Our next speaker is a family friend who shared experiences, interests, values, travels, and a mutual respect with Gordon and Betty. The spouse of Intel's fourth CEO, Craig Barrett, and I've always chosen to introduce Craig as the least talented of the Barrett pair, much to Craig's chagrin. Please join me in welcoming Ambassador Barbara Barrett, Secretary of the U.S., and amongst many other things, fishing buddy of Gordon.
Thank you, Pat. Well, this is a very special occasion. Like you, I've never known a better man than Gordon Moore. Rudyard Kipling described a man who could walk with kings but never lose the common touch. That was Gordon Moore. Maybe that common touch was instilled in Gordon through his humble beginnings in tiny Pescadero. Gordon's life mirrors the classic Horatio Alger story. Born of modest means, Gordon overcame his early adversity. He rose to greatness through hard work, pluck, and education, and he used his life's success to make the world better through extraordinary generosity. Constable Walter Moore, Gordon's father, was the lone law enforcement official in the coastal half of San Mateo County. Earlier, Gordon's dad, who himself left school in the 8th grade to help support his family, had an even more dangerous career as a logger, hauling massive logs behind brawny teams of draft horses. In post-World War I, the economy of America's home and business construction was based on wood. Vast quantities of those wooden beams and boards were sourced from the towering conifers of Northern California. Gordon's father played a part in the industry that built America back then. And decades later, Gordon played an outsized role in the high-tech industry that transformed life through his high-tech innovation. As a boy, Gordon started and ended each day milking the family cow. Though milking a cow is a simple task, it's a no excuses chore. A cow had to be milked consistently every morning and every night, no excuses. Sick, hurt, tired, feeling down, or tempted to play with the other kids, no excuse, milk the cow. Gordon milked that cow twice a day, every day. From those humble lessons of consistency, Gordon's life, work, and legacy grew. He would go on to transform the world, but his success never transformed him. He remained the reliable kid from Pescadero, consistently living up to his duties. Gordon's curiosity proved limitless, sometimes dangerously so. When gifted a child's chemistry set, he turned his dad's backyard shed into an explosives laboratory, making thermite bombs. The future chemist's curiosity soon channeled to less hazardous exploration. Gordon was simultaneously a towering giant in the global high-tech field, and yet ever humble and in touch with the seemingly mundane. In the spirit of the acclaimed book and movie A River Runs Through It, Gordon might subordinate the importance of mere engineering talent to the refined artistry of a fly fisherman. Yes, Gordon loved to fish. Stream, lake, or ocean, he loved it. Even when Forbes magazine proclaimed Gordon to be the richest man in the world, his passion was mundane, fishing. He traveled to fish with no security protection, completely vulnerable, but undaunted. His modesty made him inconspicuous. One time, Craig and I were going fishing with Gordon and Ken in a remote tropical island in the Seychelles. On the day that we arrived, hundreds of miles from a town, nearby, some Somali pirates kidnapped a British couple who had put their life savings into their small sailboat to fulfill their retirement dream of sailing around the world. Well, the bumbling pirates held the unfortunate couple for over a year, while Gordon, so understated that the pirates never took notice of his proximity, fishing, carefree in the isolated sea. As Ken could tell, Gordon's modesty characterized his family life too. At home, he was dad, or later, Baba, to the grandkids. Rumor has it that in California's history class one day, Gordon's teenage daughter noticed that when the teacher described the miracle of Silicon Valley and its high-tech leaders, the teacher repeatedly looked directly at her. She felt something was up. At home that night, she said, is Baba a big deal or something? Down to earth and the common touch. Ironically, one of the most famous photographs of Gordon is often captioned, "The Traitorous Eight." Well, Gordon was anything but a traitor. He was one of the most loyal people ever. He was loyal to his family and to his friends. He was loyal to technology and innovation. He was even loyal to failed product offerings like his Microma watch and other mechanical things like his old car that he drove to work every day for decades. Some years later, I picked Gordon up at Missoula Airport for some fishing at our Montana ranch. It was after dark, and as we drove along the Bitterroot River, I heard Gordon patting the side of the car door. I asked if I could help him with something. "Oh," he said somewhat disapprovingly, "I bet you have those power windows." He was looking for the window crank that hadn't existed in automobiles for over a generation. Gordon was data-driven and fact-based, a brilliant scientist and engineer, and always intellectually curious, which led him to invest in some of the grandest challenges facing mankind. Of course, his intel precision, reducing manufacturing to almost atomic levels, that was legendary. Billions of calculations in an instant, precise, consistent, minuscule. By contrast, at the scale of the cosmos, beyond the 30-meter telescope, generations ago, Gordon invested in a series of radio telescopes called SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. SETI employs advanced engineering and imaginative speculation to detect any signs of life beyond our solar system. Data-driven and with a boyish sense of wonder, Gordon invested in tools to tackle the greatest mysteries of our time. Ever the calculator, Gordon's famous logarithmic law was not his only calculation. He caught my attention at one shareholders meeting when he announced that the number of transistors produced in the world the previous 12 months was approximately 1/10 the number of raindrops that had fallen on drought-ravaged California that year. Who does these calculations? Another time, he calculated that the world's production of transistors was equivalent to the total number of ants in the world. I'm sure you want to know that was 10 to the 18th. Gordon not only walked with kings, he was the king of technology, but he never lost his boyish curiosity and his common touch. His character, rooted in humble pescadero, valued hard work, discovery, and integrity. Gordon's father labored in the forest, harnessing the power of draft horses to convert those giant conifers into homes and businesses. Gordon harnessed the power of ever faster, cheaper, and better silicon chips to transform the way we live, work, and play. Just think how proud Gordon's county lawman father would be of the decency and honor that characterized Gordon's life, and how proud the former timber teamster would be of Gordon's charitable commitment to preserving forest and water habitat around the world. Yes, as you know, Gordon set the standard of one of the greatest engineers and business leaders and philanthropists of our time. But even if he had been none of those things, he still would have been one of the world's most decent, honorable men, and to so many of you and to me, a most cherished friend. Heaven just got better.
His curiosity was limitless. Gordon was an environmentalist before it was popular or a business priority or before the term ESG even came into existence. He instilled into me, into Intel, and almost everyone he touched the passion to protect and preserve our planet. As one example of that passion is Conservation International. Peter Seligman has devoted his life to developing conservation programs that benefit communities through the protection of nature. He is the founder and chair of Conservation International and founder and CEO of Neoterra. Gordon and Peter's friendship began in 1990. Together, they shaped Conservation International, advocating that strong science, economic opportunity, and engagements with all sectors of society are essential for bringing conservation impact to scale. Together, and often with their families, they traveled the world, fishing rods in tow, to protect the Earth's biodiversity and healthy ecosystems for generations to come. Please join me in welcoming Peter to the stage.
First, I just send from my wife, Lee Rhodes, and myself our love to Betty and to Ken and Chris and to Steve and Kathleen, to their children. And thank you for this chance to speak. I think that every one of us here understands just how amazingly good and generous Gordon was. The foundation that he and Betty created has given so much to so many, and the causes he chose to support reflect his love of nature, his love of science, his love of community, his love of humanity. I was fortunate that our paths intertwined closely about 33 years ago. It was actually on September 30th, 1990, my 40th birthday, that I was sitting in row 23 of an Eastern Airlines 757 flying from San Jose, Costa Rica to Miami. And as the plane taxied down the runway, I opened Forbes magazine and started reading an article about Gordon Moore at the time that he was CEO of Intel. As we lifted off, I was caught by a sentence which described Gordon's, you guessed it, passion for fishing. And then the plane shook violently, and the flight attendant screamed, "We're going to crash. We're going to crash. Head between your legs. We're going to crash." And we crashed. When I finally got back to DC, I called a friend, John Young, who at that time was the CEO of Hewlett-Packard. And I asked him if he knew Gordon Moore. I thought I should meet him. John gave me Gordon's address, and I wrote to him about CI, and Gordon promptly sent a check for $100. And then I called him and I asked his secretary, Jean, if I could visit with Gordon when I went to California. Several weeks later, I was at Intel and was shown to Gordon's cubicle, located somewhere amongst a morass of other cubicles in a very large floor. I introduced CI to Gordon, and he looked at me and he asked, "Do you visit all of your $100 donors?" Our discussion focused on the need for sound scientific choices as a core element of effective conservation, and we talked about our shared love of fishing. And Gordon joined our science committee, and then CI's board, and eventually became the chair of our executive committee. Gordon provided thoughtfulness and calmness to our highly energetic team. He did not get overly excited about challenges, nor did he jump at all of our great ideas. He listened quietly and asked probing questions, never taking his eye off of the importance of challenging conventional wisdom and the need for careful examination of our rationales. Gordon was deeply worried by the rate of destruction of the natural world. He pushed hard for us to think strategically about how to have the greatest impact, and he believed deeply that environmental efforts needed to be guided by science. He valued the conversations that we had at the board meetings, especially with Dr. E.O. Wilson, about the extreme threat to biological diversity. And he embraced the idea that we needed to protect as much biodiversity as possible and as quickly as possible. In the early 1990s, the conservation world was surprised to learn that Eastern Asian investors and companies were acquiring large portions of forests from the Solomon Islands all across the small forested nations of North and South America. We were all caught off guard. Our conservation endeavors were tiny in comparison to the massive impacts on forests and community of the Far Eastern logging investments. We needed to be able to forecast the impacts of the market on biodiversity and ecosystems, and we needed data to make smart decisions. In early 2003, Russ Mittermeier, the president of CI, and I visited with Gordon and Betty at the Woodside Inn to ask for their support in creating a new center for biodiversity science. Gordon pushed hard that the center needed to focus on practical and useful information. He knew that to battle the intensifying threats to forests and biodiversity and oceans, the environmental community and governments needed facts, not slogans. Betty, listening very carefully to the conversation, asked Gordon, "What is Peter asking us for?" Gordon responded, "He is asking us for a very large amount of money. But don't worry, we have it." And out of this came the Center for Applied Biodiversity Science, now the Betty and Gordon Moore Center for Ecosystem Science. Gordon was intrepid. He explored the world, usually with a large container of fishing rods. We traveled to the Amazon and to the Pantanal, to Suriname and Papua New Guinea, to Madagascar and to the South Pacific. He was the first one in the river and the last one to come out, and he caught more fish than anyone else. On our first trip to the Amazon to visit the remote Kayapo people, Gordon was the one who used his miles to fly coach for free, while his colleagues flew in business and first. And it was Gordon who swam in the river, which was filled with large black caiman, or crocodiles. And Ken, this kind of relates to the boat. And when the salmon were running off of Golden Gate, Gordon would take out his boat and stay till we caught the limit. One time we were in deep swells in rough water with 5 salmon on board, waves crashing around us, and the Coast Guard cutter blaring over the loudspeaker to come in due to high winds. And Gordon stayed out till I reeled in the 6th salmon, And he said to me afterwards with a twinkle in his eye, "I've never seen someone retching over the side at the same time as he reeled in a salmon." It is hard to imagine the generosity of Gordon and Betty. Many years ago, we were on a scientific expedition to the Pantanal in central Brazil. We had a team of scientists with us seining the Rio Negro in search of new species of fish. The ranch we were on was an old cattle ranch in the middle of the largest wetland on Earth, the Pantanal, and it was for sale by the original owners, the Rondon family. Gordon and I talked about this exquisite place, and Gordon offered to purchase it for Conservation International as the start of a region-wide effort that would eventually, with participation of many, many organizations, become a major conservation initiative. And a few years later, we were again fishing, this time on the Green River in Wyoming, when we began discussing the idea of building a global fund for conservation of large wilderness areas. Gordon asked me as we started the day, just over breakfast, Gordon asked me how much would be needed to have big scale. I said $1 billion. We separated. We fished on our own till lunch. And then Gordon asked me, what would you do with 500 million? Or how about 250 million? Over time, this idea evolved into the Global Conservation Fund, and it was one of the very first grants made by the brand new Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation. This grant set the benchmark for exceptional philanthropy for the conservation movement that others are now reaching for. And it was done without any fanfare and with great humility. When I think of Gordon, I think of Betty. I think of their wonderful family and of the joy my wife Lee and I had together, huddled in a single bed with the entire family on a very, very cold night in the Pantanal on the Rio Negro decades ago, playing cards and laughing and thinking about what amazing creatures we would see when we floated the Rio Negro early at sunrise. As others have said, Gordon's legacy is actually already legendary. I miss Gordon, and I know that all of you do too. Thank you.
We've heard about Gordon as a family man, as an entrepreneur, as a technologist, and of course, as a fisherman. But there's one more chapter in his life that we need to cover before we conclude our time recognizing him today. His passion for education, academics, learning, this inquisitive soul that we've heard about. Thomas Rosenbaum is the president of Caltech and the Sonia William David Al Presidential Chair and Professor of Physics. Gordon Moore received his PhD in chemistry at Caltech and was a longtime supporter of the institution. The Moore's philanthropy literally reaches across Caltech. They established generous funds for undergraduate scholarships, professorships, an engineering laboratory, discretionary resources. In 2001, they personally donated $300 million to Caltech and contributed a second gift of $300 million to the Institute from the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation. At the time, the combined gifts totaling $600 million represented the largest donation ever to an institution of higher learning. Please join me in welcoming Tom to the stage.
It's a great honor to be part of this tribute and to see the various parts of an extraordinary man's life being illuminated in this fashion as instantiated by all of us here. Being the final speaker on the program, I fear that I'm in the position of everything having been said, but not everyone having said it, so I will be brief. Richard Feynman said of Albert Einstein that he was a giant. His head was in the clouds, but his feet were on the ground. But those of us who are not that tall have to choose. Gordon Moore connected the heavens and the earth. Gordon's impact on society through the technological transformations wrought by Intel and before that Fairchild Semiconductor, continues to light up the sky. His conviction that a new path forward was necessary, and his courage to embrace the risk inherent in developing a new approach to semiconductor fabrication, changed society. Gordon's prescient framing of what came to be called Moore's Law provided the North Star for Silicon Valley, U.S. industry, and world commerce for what is now approaching 60 years. Gordon and Betty's philanthropy, both personal and through the Moore Foundation, continues to expand the universe of knowledge and will continue to enrich the lives of young scholars for generation after generation. Their $600 million gift to Caltech, as described, half personal and half through the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, was the largest gift to higher education at the time. Through this gift, research in fields as diverse as brain science, tectonics, quantum physics, drug discovery, nanoscience, and cosmology were elevated to new levels of impact. Subsequently, Gordon and Ken's passion for astronomy saw light through their bold jumpstart of the 30-meter telescope project, which, if it comes to fruition, will reveal the mysteries of the universe with unprecedented clarity. Most recently, Gordon and Betty generously endowed scores of graduate student fellowships at Caltech, investing in the future through the promise of spectacular young people. At the same time, Gordon was a man whose feet were firmly on the ground. You could talk to him about anything. He was interested in everything, especially when it regarded the workings of the world. There was no ego, simply innate curiosity and a thirst for discovery. The trappings of wealth and power were foregone, permitting Gordon's humility and humanity to shine through brightly. I want to finish with a vignette involving the 30-meter telescope. In 2015, we were together on a bus heading to the summit of Mauna Kea for the TMT groundbreaking, when at about 13,000 feet, the road was blocked by a protester in a loincloth. We sat for a good while as the police tried to convince the protester to let the bus pass. They were unsuccessful and unwilling to arrest him. Frustrated but undeterred, Gordon jumped out of the bus and charged up the mountain on foot, with all of us following. He was in his mid-80s, but moving at the pace of a person decades younger. This is the image that remains with me. Gordon, his feet firmly planted on the ground, heading towards the sky.
Thank you, Tom. Betty, watching from Hawaii, I hope you've been honored as we've honored the man that you've called husband all of these years. I'm also pleased to share that Intel is recognizing the Moore philanthropy philosophy within our own halls. Going forward, the Intel Global Hero Award will be known as the Gordon Moore Award. Each year, the Gordon Moore Award will recognize Intel volunteers that demonstrate extraordinary commitment to their communities. The finalists will receive funding for the charitable organization or school of their choice in the form of a grant from the Intel Foundation. The Intel Foundation was created as a nonprofit in 1988, and Gordon was one of the first board members of the Intel Foundation. We believe an award for those who make a lasting impact on their community is befitting the name of a man who touched so many. When Gordon passed on March 24th at the age of 94, a good man, as we've heard today, he left a legacy as a loving and loved family man, as a technology and industry giant, and as a leading but quiet philanthropist. He predicted Moore's Law, he co-founded Intel, and with his wife Betty, he established the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, which has invested more than $5 billion to conserve the environment, advance science, improve patient care, and preserve the special character of this place we call home, the Bay Area. Our world is ever changing. Every aspect of human existence is becoming digital, and everything digital runs on semiconductors. It has been a little over a half century since semiconductors began shipping commercially, and today they are the foundation of most of the world's innovation. An evolution, in no small part, set in motion by Gordon E. Moore. As we work together to build the future, proudly continuing the trail blazed by Gordon, let's honor him by continuing his legacy, driving technology breakthroughs, and creating a world in which we want to live. Thank you for everything, Gordon. We'll miss you. I'll miss you. But no one will ever forget you. Thank you.